Chess King had the exact jacket you swore you needed. Herman's had every ball, bat, and glove a kid could dream up. And Gimbels was where New York shopped, before there even was such a thing as Macy's biggest rival. And today, every single one of them is gone. These were the stores that lined the malls and main streets of the 1980s, the ones we were sure would never close. Now, they only live in our memories. Today, we are walking back through the great American stores of the 1980s and what made each one impossible to forget. You didn't just walk into Chess King, you strutted in. It opened in 1968 in a mall outside Boston, built on a strange bit of market research that found young men were obsessed with two things: chess and racing. That is really where the name came from. By 1984, Chess King had grown past 500 stores, and it was the place every teenage guy went for the parachute pants, the leather jackets, and whatever look MTV said was cool that week. Then, in 1993, it was bought out by another mall chain, and 2 years later, in November of 1995, the last Chess King closed its doors for good. That chain that bought it out was Merry-Go-Round, and for a while, it owned the mall. It started as a single boutique in Atlanta back in 1968, and by the early 90s, it had grown into one of the biggest teen fashion chains in the country, with well over 1,000 stores. Merry-Go-Round had a gift for spotting a trend before anyone else and getting it onto the racks first. But betting big on one look at exactly the wrong moment caught up with it fast. The company filed for bankruptcy in 1994, and after losing more than $200 million trying to recover, it shut down completely in 1996. Saturday afternoons had a soundtrack, and you found it at Camelot Music. It actually got its start back in 1956 as a little record and tape service out of Macy, Ohio, delivering albums to other stores. The first real Camelot storefront opened in 1965 in North Canton, and soon there was one in practically every mall in the Midwest. You would stand at the listening station with a pair of clunky headphones, cassette in hand, deciding whether it was really worth your allowance. By 1998, Camelot and its sister, Chain the Wall, had grown to more than 450 stores combined. That same year, it was bought out, and every Camelot was either closed or turned into something called FYE. Walden Books was the smell of new paperbacks the second you stepped into the mall. It actually started all the way back in 1933 as a rental library inside a department store in Bridgeport, Connecticut. By the 1980s, it had more locations than any other bookstore chain in America. And here's the twist nobody expects. For over a decade, Walden Books was actually owned by Kmart, the same company running the blue light specials down the hall. Kmart eventually spun it off, along with another bookstore chain called Borders in 1995. Walden Books limped along for years after that, until Borders itself collapsed and took the last Walden Books stores down with it in 2011. Every mall had a big toy store and a small one, and the small one was KB Toys. It actually began in 1922 as a candy wholesaler in Massachusetts and did not sell a single toy until 1946. By 1973, it had rebranded as KB Toy and Hobby with just 26 stores, and it grew fast from there, eventually swallowing up smaller toy chains one after another. At its peak in the late 90s, KB Toys had more than 1,300 stores, tucked into nearly every mall in the country. It filed for bankruptcy in 2004, and by February of 2009, the very last store had closed for good. Before Toys R Us ruled the toy aisle, there was Child World, and you knew it the second you saw it because the building looked like an actual castle. Turrets, towers, a giant arched doorway right at the entrance. It started in 1962 in Quincy, Massachusetts, and after buying up a rival chain called Children's Palace in 1975, it grew into the second biggest toy retailer in the entire country, with more than 180 stores combined. But cash troubles caught up with it fast. Vendors stopped shipping new toys, and shelves started sitting empty. By the summer of 1992, Child World was liquidating everything, and the last castle closed that September. If you needed a new baseball glove or your first pair of cleats, you went to Herman's World of Sporting Goods. It actually opened all the way back in 1916 as a little music shop in Lower Manhattan before it pivoted into sporting goods entirely. It grew slowly for decades, then expanded fast in the 80s, reaching 259 stores across 35 states by 1992. But heavy debt from all that expansion caught up with it. And after 2 separate bankruptcies, every Herman store had closed by 1996. Out in New England, the discount store with the big red name was Coldor. It was started in 1951 by a newlywed couple named Carl and Dorothy Bennett, who blended their own first names to come up with the store's name. Their whole idea was simple: name brand merchandise at real discount prices with actual service on the floor, something the bargain stores of the time did not bother with. Caldor grew into a regional giant, more than 160 stores strong and over $2.5 billion a year in sales at its peak. It filed for bankruptcy in 1995, tried to hang on for a few more years, and finally closed the last of its stores in May of 1999. And if Woolworth was the five and dime on Main Street, Woolco was its big box cousin out by the highway. Woolworth opened it in 1962 to chase the growing discount store boom without messing with its classic stores back downtown. For 20 years it worked. Hundreds of Woolco stores spread across the country. But on September 24, 1982, Woolworth suddenly announced it was closing every single American Woolco. And by January of 1983, all 336 stores were gone, the biggest retail liquidation in the country's history at the time. We will close this one out with the grandest store on the list, Gimbels. Adam Gimbel opened the very first one back in 1842 in a tiny Indiana town, and by 1930, it had grown into the largest department store chain in the entire world. Gimbels even started the very first department store Thanksgiving parade back in 1920, years before Macy's ever put one on. But new ownership decided the chain was not worth keeping, and in 1987, the last 35 Gimbels stores in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Connecticut all closed their doors within the same year, ending a name that had once rivaled Macy's for the title of biggest store in America. Every one of these stores has its own story, and a lot of them have their own full video right here on the channel. So take a look after this. Which one of these 1980s stores do you miss the most? Drop it in the comments and hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one.